Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today I'm here with certified divorce coach Andra Davidson to talk about holiday strategies for divorced parents. This is a timely topic, Andra. But before we start in, just you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got into doing what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Steve. It's
Oh,
really nice to be here. Um, my background is in communications and marketing, which sort of has a surprising amount of overlap actually in the divorce world, especially that communications part, as you would guess. I went
yep.
through my own divorce after about 20 years of marriage, and that was 9 years ago. And I was helping people sort of informally, friends of mine and such, to navigate this process. And one of my friends said to me, I don't know how people do this without you. And I really realized how hard it is. And I, of course, knew that from my own experience, but not to have professional support. Sometimes it really taxes your friends and family past a certain point. So a support system is important, and a professional support system is really an important component of your overall approach to the process. Um, I went and got my certification. I'm a trained mediator also. I really use a lot of my communications background and knowledge in this process, and it's really the work I'm meant to be doing. I really get so much satisfaction helping people to navigate this really challenging time.
Oh, you know, the you're talking about being a communications person and in divorce and in family life issues, it's almost always the communication breakdown that makes things worse. So, I mean, I
Yeah,
love the idea of using your communication skills, especially to be a mediator, because, that's that's the best time to get things resolved. And sometimes people have the
yeah,
hardest because they don't have that communication kind of thing going. So this is
yeah.
great. This is really good.
Good. Yeah.
Eh, So now we do get a lot of feedback from our clients about stress and the stress of co-parenting and
Yeah.
the stress of divorce and the stress of holidays while co-parenting. That is a
Right. Pile it on, right? Holidays,
pile it on.
co-parenting, more
And
interaction, all of it. Yeah.
oh
It's a
God,
tough time of
yeah,
year. Yeah.
it's crazy. And it comes on you so fast, you just get stressed to the max. And I know you talk about starting with kind of figuring out where the stress is coming from because it could be coming from a million different directions, can
Yeah, it can. I love starting at that place because it's really easy to say, "Oh, I'm so stressed," and just, what do I need to do? Those are when our bodies, our systems typically go into some of our habits that might not be the best for us, right? Like, comfort food, maybe substance abuse, maybe sleeping too much. If, that's a bad thing. In some cases, that might be not the worst thing. Um, there's all kinds of responses that we have to stress. But when we can actually ask ourselves, what is the real trigger? What's really causing us the stress? Then we can create a plan to solve it. So, for example, it might be that you are worried about additional interaction with your ex that you don't typically have to have when you're not on a different schedule. The kids are in school, when they're out and it's break and there's this increased holiday exchange. It's a lot of interaction, a lot of back and forth that you may not have to deal with the rest of the year or for much of the rest of the year. So that's one source. Sometimes it can be these new traditions or giving up old ones. Are you missing people in your life that have been there before? Are you feeling lonely and overwhelmed? I mean, those things happen no matter where we are in life. Add in a divorce or a new, separation, and of course it's that much more complicated, right? So when you can really ask yourself, and think honestly about what it is that is triggering you and upsetting you the most, then what I really like to do is be able to think through, okay, if it is that interaction, for example, with your ex, how can you create a plan to handle that so that you're not caught off guard? Do
Yeah.
you need some messages that you have prepared to handle it? Do you need to make sure that the drop off or handoff is with minimal interaction time? Is it in a neutral place where it's easy for you to say, "Oh, I've got something scheduled in 5 minutes. Have a great day," and you don't have to linger. Whatever it is, when you can really think through that, it gives you options, and that's what I really love to have for anybody who's stressed like that, is options that allow you to have the control back in your court, so you don't feel like you're just responding. You can feel a little bit more proactive about how you're handling something.
The kind of things that stress people out a lot, it seems to me, are kind of the things you kind of talk about, both being alone and being with other people.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's true.
and that whole idea, a lot of uh, again, miscommunication happens here because you're having to communicate more, and about weird things like what am I gonna give them, for
Right.
Christmas, and what are you gonna give them, and you got to talk about that stuff, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And those are triggers because sometimes one parent may be able to spend more money than the other parent, for example. Or do they want to go in together? How does that feel? Does that feel appropriate or does it not? Do you feel like you're always being outdone, or, that there's an urge for your ex to sort of outshine you in some way? Or is that just your perception, maybe? But whatever those things are, if they're in the back of your mind and they're ruminating and causing you stress, then they're likely to flare up and show up in your actions and your choices throughout the holidays, or just in how you present yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you
Yeah.
show up for your own self, right? Which is just as important, because that, of course, ripples out into all the rest of our actions and our feelings. So I really, one of the things I say all the time is that your ex can never make you pick up the phone or respond to a text or an email in a certain way, or say something that you don't want to say. And sometimes we think they can. Sometimes we, assign them that power, even though they don't really have it. So I really like to remind people that you have that control, and taking it back and acknowledging that you get to control what you say and what you do and when, is one of the most important and empowering tools you have in the divorce process. And it's completely free, and it is completely in your control. And when you realize that, it gives you some confidence back. You realize, okay, no, they can't make me do or say something I don't want to. It's not easy. I'm not trying to minimize the effort that it takes, but the acknowledgement of that this is something I can control and put in my court is really powerful. And I definitely suggest that people do that and take a step back and say, if I was going to show up as my best version of myself, if I said exactly what I wanted to, um, in a productive way, what would that look like? And how
Yeah,
might I set myself up to be able to do that?
I love that. I love that because it's so hard to not want to get the last word in,
Yeah,
and so it
it
just
really
keeps
is.
going.
Exactly. And then everybody wants to escalate on top of the other person,
Yep.
right? So then it just never ends. And then you get down this road, and oftentimes we don't even know where we started at that point,
Yeah.
right? Then it's just a toxic exchange that doesn't feel good to anybody. So
Right.
how could you, if you could give yourself the opportunity to think down that road ahead of time and say, if I don't want to go there, how can I avoid it? If
Yeah.
I, another way to look at that, if I walked away from this interaction and it went as well as it possibly could. If I looked back and gave it a 10 out of 10, I did that the very best I could. What does that look like? Does it mean no interaction? Does it mean that you took the high road, that maybe you said, have a good day? Maybe you said hello. Maybe you're amicable, but you didn't ask a question that you know you shouldn't ask. Um, what does that look like for you, for your situation? Think about that ahead of time and see if you can get there.
I like that. I like that being intentional sort of,
Yeah,
thing.
that's really
The
the biggest part is the intentionality of it. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And another part and with that, our our clients kind of get stressed and not it's the uncertainty, I guess, of what's going to happen now. Because before we did this, we went there. We this was the time for this. This was the time for
Yeah.
that. And you talk about, well, all those traditions can be stressful, but you can't necessarily keep them all up. But you can like start to create new ones.
Yeah, I actually love that as an opportunity for parents who are stressed about this because it can be really hard. We put that pressure on ourselves a lot of times, right? We have to give the kids the holiday that they're used to, or follow through on the traditions that we've established over these years as a couple, as a family. But I actually would really ask that everyone to evaluate that question for themselves and say, why do you have to do it exactly the same? To what end, right? Is it really serving you to do that? Is it serving the kids to do that? And most kids, what they really, really want is your undivided attention, right? For the most part. So sometimes the opportunity to sit down with them and say, let's come up with some new traditions together. What would be meaningful for you this year? And really listen to their response. For them to be heard can be such a gift, actually. For them to
Yes.
really be heard in this process, chances are, they know this year is different too, right? They know things aren't like they always were. To give them a voice in what a joyful, what a holiday could look like that is meaningful for them is also a real gift. Maybe it's time away. Maybe it's something that you guys do together, an adventure or cooking, or that you go shop together for something that you both want. It's or all the kids, it's a lot of opportunity to make it your own if you're willing to give the kids a chance to weigh in too. And ask yourself honestly, why am I pushing myself to take out the best china again and to do all the decoration if it doesn't feel sincere? If it feels good to you, awesome, then do it. But if it doesn't feel good and you're doing it just because you think you should, then I would say take a moment and pause and give yourself the opportunity to change it up this year.
Yeah. And that I guess could involve saying no to your ex who says, "Hey, we need to do this year because we always do."
Absolutely. I mean, boundaries are a big part of the divorce process in general. And, to be clear about what is okay for you and what isn't, you have every right to do that. It doesn't mean that you aren't kind or that you don't say it, with gratitude. You can say, thanks for offering. I'm really sorry that doesn't work for us this year. Or
Yeah.
no, thank you. I'm sorry that isn't going to work. You don't necessarily owe an explanation of why. You get to do the things also that work for you. And that's an important step for most people during divorce anyway, and can be especially challenging during the holidays, when we feel like we're doing everything for everybody else.
Oh God, yeah. And all the stuff you talk about, you know, sort of is like under fire because the holidays are, like that under
Right.
fire, heavy duty. But everything you're talking about seems like it's going to have a positive impact for non-holidays, just for as your relationship goes on.
Yeah. I think it's really true that setting the foundation for how you want to show up through divorce, and being, as you said, very intentional about that during the process, um, will ripple out into your life in so many beneficial ways. Because first of all, it puts you in control of your own choices. When you start thinking about who do I want to be and can I be that version of myself? Are the choices that I'm making through this process a reflection of who I really want to be? And that's not to be, Pollyanna about it. Nobody's perfect, right? It's not that you're not going to make a mistake. It's not that there aren't going to be challenges along the way. But when you take the time to set that foundation, it makes it that much easier to make those choices as you go through it. Then when you have goals about how you want to co-parent, who you want to be during the process, when decisions come your way, which they will every day, how do you respond to something? How do you talk about something? You have a goal that you can use as a sounding board when you're making that decision. Does this help me meet my goal? And if it does or doesn't, that your answer is usually pretty clear. And that's where the intention is so useful. And it really helps you clarify.
And that makes it so much easier. Because again, you just see a lot. It's like, what should I do? I mean, it's just not clear where my path needs to go, and that's what you help so much with. And I love that. I also kind of like that you talked about boundaries, but you talked about sort of being flexible and adapting, and so probably the first one isn't going to be the best holiday, but you learn, don't you? Teaches
You
you.
do. And I think, there's no doubt that that first one can be one of the hardest. And if there's two things, maybe three, that I would say are the most important for parents out there who are really like in that boat of being brand new to this, trying to figure out where to start, what's most important. The first is, don't stand on ceremony, make plans. If you are worried about being by yourself, ask people so that you don't have to be all alone. Go to a siblings, go to a friend's. They might just not know to ask you. Maybe they should. There's always that feeling of, oh, they should have asked me. But don't stand on that ceremony. Go ahead and make the plans. The next is to be kind to yourself. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend if he or she were in this situation. Chances are you wouldn't say, you're being really lazy, get up and, feeling sorry for yourself, get up and go do something about it. You would probably give your friend a little more grace than you're willing to give yourself. Try to do that. This first year is always, always the hardest. And that last part, I think, is, that third one that I like to offer, which is maybe this year, fine is good enough. I have a client who said that is her mantra, and I've used it with many times with others now, because that first year she was really struggling to feel like she had all this burden to put together the perfect holiday season for her kids. But the truth was, nobody felt like it was the same, right? So relieving everyone of the pressure to do things exactly the same is actually a really nice gift that you can give yourself also. And maybe fine is just good enough. Get through it, come out the other side and feel like you did the best you could. Be kind to yourself. And then, you know what? Move forward. It's just a couple weeks right now. It will pass, as difficult as it feels, but try not to make it, this just mountain of challenge
Yeah.
that you put on yourself during this time.
It feels like when aren't having a good time, you're not being kind to yourself, and you can't get yourself to where you can enjoy anything. That can make it so much harder on the kids too. I mean, it's
Right.
like, they see when you're not happy.
Right. Yeah, it's the metaphor of putting on your own oxygen mask first, right, before you can help them. And it is similar, because you really can't give somebody else, your kids, a holiday season that's great if you're so miserable. And it's not that, you should be feeling, pretend to be perfectly happy if you're not either. It's okay to sometimes say, this may not be the exact way that we've been used to it, but obviously these are age appropriate discussions. But um, I hope we can work together to come up with some things that we would really love to do together and make it special for us this year. What would that look like for you? What would be special for you? What would you like to do? If we could pick three things to do, when you're home over the holidays, what would it be? When you're off school, what would you like to do? Chances are you can do some of those things. And that once your child, as we had talked about, has been heard, that's such an important thing for them.
As a divorce coach, I'm absolutely sure, and as a mediator, that you see a lot of high conflict situations,
Yeah.
divorces, co-parenting. Um, that has to add a lot of difficulty into kind of getting through this, getting through the holidays.
Yeah.
And is there some way, and you've sort of talked about it here, to I don't know that you're ever gonna get rid of high conflict, but minimizing it or working through it or suspending it or anything?
Yeah, it's such a good question. In some cases, that looks like no contact, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the best resolution in those high conflict situations is just no contact at all. So that's one way to look at it, is that's peaceful, right? That actually brings the tension level down. Maybe during this time you can completely separate. The other is, sometimes one person changing the tone can mean everything. What if you
Yeah.
were the one to say, I'm just going to say happy holidays and see what happens? What if you were willing to be the grown up? And look, I get it. A lot of people say, well, I'm always the adult. The other person never is. I'm always the one, doing the heavy lifting, acting like the grown up. My spouse never does. My ex never does. Okay, sometimes that's just the way it is, right? If you're the adult, be the adult. Set the tone that you want. Think about how you would advise your kids to act. Sometimes just that one person making a tiny little effort like that can change things.
Right.
So, and even if it doesn't, it's no real harm, for you to have said something decent, right? So I think you are the only one who really understands your particular conflict level and situation. So you have to judge whether or not it would be appropriate. In some cases, I said no contact is best case scenario. And in other cases, maybe there's a little olive branch that can be extended. And this could be a change, even if it takes a long time to implement. It started with you
Yeah.
and it started during this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're just about blown through our time. This is just such great stuff. Before we go, I do want to ask you about, the role that you can play in helping with all of this.
Yeah.
As not just maybe a coach, but as a mediator. I don't know if you've ever had a mediation for parenting or that kind of stuff, but I mean, it sounds like, you can sort of be the reasonable sometimes person in the room to help.
Yeah, I sometimes joke that I'm like the air conditioning unit, right? I sometimes just need to help people bring the temperature down in the
Yeah.
room so that we can figure out where to compromise, where to pause, where to prioritize, right? So, you know, a coach can be such a such an important part of the team to help you prioritize and set goals and figure out how you're going to get through this time in, breaking it into manageable pieces, as opposed to just feeling like it's all on top of you at once and so overwhelming. That's one role that a coach really can play. One thing I do to your point about working on parenting is every now and then couples will come to me to help them create their parenting plan.
Yep.
We do a draft of it. It's just like the Word doc, right? We figure out the exchanges, the holidays, the general trade-off, and then they can take it to you guys, to their lawyers, to say, how do we finalize this? Making sure all the, of course, legal, I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And then they've worked together on it in a less stressful, hopefully, less, conflicted situation. And we've been able to really talk through what the priorities are. So that is a way that parents who want to work together to do this, I'm working on it with several couples right now. And it's a really good way, and also less expensive, truly, than your lawyers usually, to help
Exactly.
them do that.
Exactly. And a lot of time, attorneys have, they're from the legal aspect. Well, this is what you
Yeah.
can get, this is what you can do, this is what the,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily asking the questions you ask, you know, what makes you better?
Exactly.
And
That's a big
and I
part
love
of
that.
the process too, because the attorneys are there to handle the legal dissolution of the marriage, right?
Yeah.
You guys are not trained to handle the emotional component. That doesn't mean you haven't had the experience or have some knowledge to add to it, but it's not your core focus. And, for someone to be in the room who can help balance that so that people are making good decisions and figuring out where to prioritize and understanding the role that their emotions play in the process can be really, really
Yeah.
valuable.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I know it seems counterintuitive to add a person to the team to save money, but it actually does that because you get to resolution sooner, you're more able to compromise, make better decisions. So a lot of times I actually do really see that too, that having a coach as part of that can be really helpful in that way.
We see that all the time because, when you can settle, it's always cheap.
Oh, exactly. Right. No one is
Um,
recommending anybody go to court under
no, no,
99.9% of the circumstances. It is
no,
not your friend to be in court.
no,
No.
no, it isn't. But now,
Mm-mm.
before we go, uh, can you talk a little bit about how people can get a hold of you if they want to contact
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is betterthanbeforedivorce.com. And I have a digital course that offers emotional support that people can get, at home, on their own, anytime if they don't want that one-on-one private coaching. But those are some of the same tools and skills and strategies that I use with my clients every day. So this is very affordable and accessible because I really do believe everybody needs that emotional support when they're going through divorce. So I've tried to make that very accessible so that everybody can get to it. That's on my website, as well as a lot of free resources. I have a quiz, I have some downloads, and anything that is helpful to you, I encourage you to visit and download and use. And you're welcome to reach out to me if I can be of help.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. This was really, really good, because
Thank you.
talking, about actual strategies for divorced parents at holiday time
Yeah,
is just as helpful as it can be. So thank you so much.
my pleasure. I wish everybody happy holidays.
I do too. And in that, everyone, thank you for joining us today. If anyone has any further questions on today's topic, you can absolutely get a hold of Andra, or you could post it here and we can get you connected with her. And until next